The Magicians podcast is brought to you in proud association with the Magic Circle, Alakazam Magic, and Gigio.
The downside of that is when shit hits a fan and there's no work coming through, you're the guy that does quick change, you're not the guy that does close-up anymore. So where does that work come from?
Hello everybody, welcome to the Magicians podcast. My name is Richard Young, I am your host. Thank you very much for pressing the download button and welcome to the show. Now, if you have Instagram, please do give us a follow on there. We are at the Magicians podcast. I've just got back from Las Vegas where I've recorded 6 incredible interviews with some Las Vegas magicians, and that Instagram page will be the first place you will find out about those interviews. So if you've got your phone near you right now, unless you're driving, please click onto your Instagram page and follow at the Magicians podcast. It would be great to connect with you on there. Okay, I think it's time to check in with our great friend Alan Hudson and find out what's been going on in the world of magic this week. Alan Hudson, it is good to be back with you, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. We're doing this quite late at night, aren't we? Because you've been away. You've got jet lag. More about that in a second. And I've got a croaky voice because I'm about to go to sleep. But we thought we'd get the podcast out because we didn't do one last week.
Yeah, and so let's talk about why there wasn't a podcast last week. You may have seen it on social media. There were actually, to be honest, there were 2 reasons why there was not a podcast last week. The first one was it was supposed to be Wayne Dobson, and there were some technical problems with the recording. It was going to be really tough for me to sort out those problems because I was going away, but there maybe would have been time to do it. But then obviously, while all that was going on, then it was announced that Anthony Owen had suddenly left us. And so a couple of days after that, you and I had a chat and decided that it wasn't really appropriate for us to have a kind of our usual banter, shall we say, in light of that, well, as we all know, shocking and unexpected news. So we've given it a rest for a week, and we're back refreshed. But I think it's only right.
It was like a sucker punch, wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? It was just like at that time, it was like somebody had winded me, just somebody had punched me,
yeah.
and we just had this chat and we're going, I don't want to do a podcast. I just can't even be bothered.
Yeah.
Like, why? You know, why would you?
It was also very strange. Anthony, I don't think this is not an exaggeration. Anthony loved this podcast. He tuned in every single week. There would often be times when I would wake up on a Friday morning and, you know, he'd already text me at 9 o'clock in the morning, and he'd already have listened to that week's episode where obviously he'd be on his commute or whatever. So it was something I really loved, actually, that Anthony was a listener, and he would often text me about some of the crazy stuff magicians would say on it, and we'd have a lot of good banter about it. So it just didn't seem right to do one last week, and so I think we put it on social media. People seem to agree it was a nice thing to do, to just out of respect to have a week off. But
yeah, do you know so I felt like, because I didn't see Anthony all the time, but he used to message almost every week after the podcast, and he would just say things like, "Oh, I've never heard the piss story before." That made me laugh, or with a crying emoji, and little things. And my favourite messages were always, and you can't bring this up on the podcast, but those are always good ones. Because once or twice he'd said the thing, and then I'd mentioned it that Owen had messaged, and I said it on the podcast. So he felt like he had to say, "This isn't for the podcast." This bit. But yeah, it was just, the magic world. It was just had especially in the UK, especially. I'm sure it was sort of well known everywhere, but especially here in the UK, like, it was just so unexpected, wasn't it? And horrible, and the whole magic world seemed to be just in utter shock. Still in shock now, but after a couple of weeks, you kind of your head starts to get used to the idea, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And you and I have talked about how we even talk about this now, because it's still difficult and there really isn't anything to say. There's no information. We've all just got to go through the process of dealing with the shock of it. And but one of the things that I mentioned to you when we were talking on the phone, you said I should mention here, was that it was really amazing to see what a little family we all are, actually, and how there was a lot of love, actually, and support, among certainly magicians that I know, and I think you had a similar experience where, there were a lot of tears. I spoke to a lot of fully grown men, on the phone in tears, and I've never done that before. But yeah, we all supported each other, and actually that was quite amazing. And you said that you can't imagine, if you're a group of plumbers and one of the plumbers dies, that the other plumbers are all kind of, supporting each other. But that certainly seemed like how it was for us, here. We all knew him in one way or another, whether you worked with him directly or you just knew who he was, or you'd seen him lecture, or or just seen his TV shows that he's made, or something. Something that he's done has affected your magical life. Yeah. I don't think listen, I'm happy to be put right here, but I think if you go back over all of these podcasts I've made, and what are we up to now, 93 podcasts, I don't think you will find another person who was mentioned as many times as Anthony through those episodes. He touched so many of these. Chris Cox has been mentioned quite a lot. That is true. Coxie, maybe. I try to edit him out these days, every chance I get. But yeah, like Anthony was mentioned lots of times through all these episodes where he'd touch people's careers in one way or another. So listen, there isn't really anything more to say. Obviously, just condolences to his family and everybody who loved him. And there is a GoFundMe page which has been set up for Anthony's family, which I have tweeted on the Magicians Podcast Twitter. It's the pinned tweet at the top of the page. It'll be very easy for you to find. It's also on the Magicians Podcast Facebook page as well. So if you want to make a donation, you can do that very easily by visiting the GoFundMe page. There's also a memorial book as well, where you can leave kind of stories about any interaction you had with Anthony over the years. Darren Brown's tweeted that, Andy Nyman's tweeted that, so again, it's very easy to find online. So I think that's all we can say, isn't it? Yeah, it is good. Yeah, and we did speak about this before, that we said we'll mention about Anthony and why there wasn't a podcast, and sort of what he meant to us and stuff, because we both loved him. He was I just can't imagine a magic world now with him not around in it. He's always been there in my magic life and in your magic life, and we've worked with him and done things, and then he's now not here. But for the podcast, we're going to keep it going. And I did say it's a bit like the One Show or This Morning, where they do like a real sad segment. They get this kid on that's had his life ruined by bullying or something, and then they go, oh, that's really sad, and then they go, now here's Gerald Brandreth with some colourful ties or something. That's true. And then they move on to another bit, and you go, I feel like we have to do that now. We have to sort of move on to another section, and I don't really know how to do it. Well, we don't really have a choice, but that's exactly what we have to do. So, and I think I think that is the right thing to do. So I've just got back from Las Vegas.
Vegas.
Yeah, I've just made a trip out there. I literally got back a few hours ago, and had a great week out there, making the end of the series, the end of this podcast series as we move towards the last few episodes now. And had a great week there. Saw lots of shows. Also, I met an amazing guy. I can't wait to tell you about this. I met a guy called Pesci. And Pesci, you think I'm a big David Copperfield fan. You haven't met Pesci. This guy is incredible. He works on the Matt Franco Magic Show in Vegas. But he, over the years, has created an incredible collection of David Copperfield memorabilia, which he has in this big room in his house. And Pesci and I have been chatting online for a few weeks, and he invited me to his house to go and see this amazing collection. honestly, what
was it like a sort of shrine?
Yes. I mean, if you saw that,
did you feel a bit sort of? Is it a bit like Alan Partridge?
it's exactly that. Yeah. It's exactly like that. It's this massive room filled with so much amazing stuff, and Pesci is so dedicated to this collection. The stories of how he obtained some of this stuff is really kind of inspiring. He's absolutely dedicated, and so it was one of the highlights of my entire trip to Vegas. I asked him if it was okay if I mentioned his collection here on the podcast, and actually he said he'd love me to do it, and he'd also like me to say to any of the listeners that if any of you out there have any really rare David Copperfield memorabilia, be it posters, ticket stubs,
hair, nails,
anything at all, he'd love to hear from you. He's really easy to find. He's on Instagram. His username is Pesci4TD, so it's at PESCI4TD. Also, he has, if you want to see his collection online, he has a website which is www.picturetrail.com, and then again / it's his username again, PESCI4TD. I think he loved showing me his collection. He loved my enthusiasm. I think if you get in touch with him and you're in Vegas, I'm sure he'd love to show you around. There's some amazing bits in it if you love David Copperfield. There's nothing else like this in the world that I've ever come across. And so, yeah, that was absolutely brilliant. Like I said, also recorded lots of podcasts while I was there.
Now, go on. Everybody's thinking it.
Right, yeah.
Did you interview Copperfield?
I did not interview David Copperfield.
Oh, I thought you were going to say I did then.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, it didn't happen. But the story is not over. Basically, I was there for a week, and I won't ruin it because there's a lot to the story, and some of it isn't going to come out later in the series. I want some of it to be a surprise for you. But the surprise is not me interviewing David Copperfield, by the way.
Okay.
But
so we can take that off the cards.
Well,
you definitely haven't done it.
I haven't done it, but that's not to say it can't happen. In fact, I was there for the week, and I reached out to them several times, and actually towards the end of the week, they said to me that, and this was quite amazing, they did say to me, David is prepared to be on the podcast, which was incredible. But they said, probably have to be a telephone interview or something like that. So I've emailed them, and hopefully we can keep the dialogue open and sort something out for the near future, because we are coming up to episode 100, and I would love... he's the greatest magician of all time in my eyes, and I think your eyes too, Hudson, isn't it? It's fair to say.
Yeah.
And I just think it would be amazing if he was episode 100. So I haven't given up. Although I'm back in the UK now, I am prepared to go back. I will fly back out there if I can interview him, and I've kind of put that on the table to the team there, and got all my fingers crossed and everything, hoping that they'll come back to me and say that if I go back out there that I can interview him. But at the moment, I'm sorry to say no, it did not happen. But
need anybody to carry your bags next time? Yeah.
Well, I will just say this. I don't want to give away too many surprises, but even though I didn't get David Copperfield, if you are a David Copperfield fan, you are going to absolutely love 2 of the episodes that are going to come up a little bit later in this series. I will say nothing more for now. But yeah, you're still going to want to stay tuned to the Magicians podcast.
So what else were you doing apart from podcasts? You must have been doing other stuff. Been to see some shows?
Isn't it just the best place in the whole world if you're a magician? Just the names there, the people there. I had lunch with Kevin James, which I absolutely loved. We went to the David Copperfield show together. Kevin loved the show, and it was amazing to sit next to Kevin James while David Copperfield performed the Floating Rose. That was just amazing. Kevin hadn't seen the show for a long time.
Was he sort of nudging you and going, I do it better?
No, not at all. I think he was just, he just loved seeing it performed. Obviously, David does it perfectly. And Kevin hadn't seen the show for many years, so he said to me afterwards how much he loved all of the amazing things that the Copperfield team have put into that show at the MGM Grand over the last few years. So that was great. I saw Chris Angel's show, I saw Nathan Burton, I saw Matt King, obviously I saw David Copperfield's show. I'll tell you what I did, Hudson. Here's a little tip for you guys. I know lots of magicians go in and out of Vegas over the years. Here's my top tip for Vegas, and it is not to do with a magic show. The best thing I did...
Put it all on red.
No, number 2, black. That's what you want.
Okay.
That one's the lucky. That's the lucky number. What you should do next time you go to Vegas, if you don't normally do this, I'd never done it before. I hired a car. Total game changer. Changed the whole trip. I was able to get off of the strip and go and eat in some restaurants away from the strip, and I went to a place called Red Rock Canyon, which is about 20 minutes from the strip. It's this incredible 13-mile drive through the most incredible scenery you can imagine, and the traffic's all one way, and also I went to Hoover Dam, drove to Hoover Dam as well. Having a car totally changed the trip for me. So that would be my top tip next time you go to Vegas: get a hire car. Have you ever done that before?
That's it. That's a good tip. I've never hired a car in Vegas, I don't think. The only time I hired it is to go to the Hoover Dam, and then we also went to the Grand Canyon, which is about 5 hours away or something.
Yeah, long way.
And then it was it was so hot in Vegas, we were in our shorts and t-shirt. We drove for about 5 hours to Grand Canyon. We got out the car. It was freezing, absolutely freezing. We got out the car for about 10 seconds. Had a quick look and went back in the car. It was that cold.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. This has been a lot of me this week talking, because I've just had this amazing week in Vegas. Hudson, what have you been up to?
Well, you've been in Vegas.
You've been in Northampton.
I've been doing a close-up gig.
Have you? How'd it go?
Yeah, it was terrible.
That's normal.
It was terrible.
What's so bad about it?
It was for it's like a conference thing. This is literally tonight. This is just what I've come back from for tonight. It was conference, and it was all international people and a lot of Germans. I asked them if they knew the Ehrlich brothers. Some of them did. Some of them didn't.
Did they? That's good.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, that was good actually. We chatted about the Ehrlich brothers for a little bit, and yeah, I said, "Oh, do you know they make a monster truck up here? Here's 5 £20 notes. How about that? Check out these receipts." Yeah, it's just weird, isn't it? Because you have to change your whole material, and you can't do all the gags, because you do gags and they just stare at you, and then it knocks your confidence. So normally, I woke up and I'm not going to give away my killer one-liners, but you walk up and do your stuff, and then they just sort of stare at you as if you just, I don't know, wiped dog muck on the plate or something. Do you know what I mean? And they just kind of, yeah, terrible gig.
That's been your week, though.
That's been my week. Yeah,
you did gigs. I think I had a better week this week than you. Just this week.
I think you did have a better week. Yeah, I've got some comedy clubs coming up at the weekend. That'll be fun. So what else happened in Vegas? What was the best? Did you go and see any other non-magic shows?
I saw Love, the Cirque du Soleil show, which was quite interesting. I think I've heard a rumour. Look, I don't know. This is only what I've heard. I think the Cirque du Soleil shows in Las Vegas are really struggling at the moment, and certainly, the show we saw, the place was half empty. So I don't know if Cirque du Soleil's reached saturation point in Vegas or something. I'm not sure, but I mean, apparently there's a new one opening soon at Luxor. So, but there's some articles online that you can read about if Cirque du Soleil, the bubble has sort of burst for Cirque du Soleil in Vegas. And talking of bubbles bursting, that's where this podcast comes in this week. The guest is Keelan Leyser, and this podcast you're about to hear is really, really interesting. Do you know Keelan, first of all?
Yeah, I know him. I don't know him well.
Okay, so Keelan, genuinely, I've explained this before, but Keelan was one of my childhood heroes. When I was a kid, he was 4 years older than me, which when you're a kid is a lot of time. And he was going through Young Magician of the Year, Reading Junior Days, and he had this incredible act. And to me as a kid, I just couldn't believe how good he was, actually. And it was quite intimidating, to a point where I never entered the stage competition because the likes of him and Dominic were just so good. Keelan has recently moved to Las Vegas. He's made the move across, and we met up a few days ago, and I recorded his story. He's had about 10 careers. He's had, obviously, he's like all of us, he had a little phase of doing close-up magic. He had the quick change act. Do you remember when he did that with his girlfriend Charlotte? They were on
Yes, I remember the quick change act, and then magic tricks. magic shop?
Well, that's why I mentioned the bubble bursting, because Keelan talks about how, on this podcast, about how the quick change thing, the bubble sort of burst for it, and that's why he's had to move on to doing other things. Like you said, yes, he's also had a magictricks.co.uk, and now he's doing some fantastic technology magic with Matt Daniel Baker. They've been on Masters of Illusion last season, so you can have a look at that on YouTube. If you would like to do that before listening to this podcast. Also, this is quite interesting. So the first part of this interview, Keelan and I talk in quite a lot of detail about those days when we were kids, of Reading Junior Days and Young Magician of the Year, and that incredible culture that existed that we've discussed here before with Dominic Wood and Richard Griffin and Philip Hitchcock and all these guys. And so if it's not your era, some of it might be a little bit like, I don't really know what they're talking about. If it is your era, I think you're going to love it. But if not, stick with this podcast, because after we get through that in this interview, you're going to hear about Keelan's many other careers and also about his move to Vegas, which I think you're going to find absolutely fascinating. If it was your era, you're going to love what I'm about to say to you, and that is that on June the 24th at the Magic Circle, there is going to be an event celebrating the history of the Reading Junior Day and all the fantastic work that Keith Churcher and his team did. So put it in your diary. If you remember Reading Junior Day and it was part of your childhood growing up as a young magician, that event is going to be fantastic at the Magic Circle. I know a few of the plans, and it's going to be one of those really special nights at the Magic Circle. There is also a Facebook page which you can join. If you ever went to the Reading Junior Day, search for this Facebook page. It's Reading Junior Day Alumni, and yeah, it'd be great to get some more members in there. And they're looking for photos and videos and any memories that you have of those 25, 26 junior days that happened in Reading all those years ago. So yeah, I think that's what we're up to. Got anything else you want to share with us this week, Hudson?
No, I'm ready for bed, I'll be honest with you. But it's been nice catching up, and I can't wait to listen to this podcast.
Well, Hudson, you're tired, so get yourself off to bed. And while you do that, everyone else can listen to this fantastic interview with the quick change artist, the magic shop owner, the digital magician, Keelan Leyser. Here we go. So here we are with a podcast from Las Vegas, Nevada, but this time I'm sat with one of my childhood heroes. He knows this. It makes him go a bit red when I say it. But Keelan Leyser is here. Welcome to the Magicians Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
This is amazing. So let me get it all off my chest first. We'll put it all on me, okay? Here's a simple reality. For anyone who doesn't know or didn't listen to the Dominic Wood podcast, basically, I was a young magician. I'm 4 years younger than you.
That's right.
And so you were years ahead of me doing your incredible scissor act. And you basically made it that I was too scared to enter Young Magician of the Year. That's why I never won it. That's my excuse anyway.
Well, I never won it either.
You didn't win it either. But look, it was a huge part of my childhood, huge part of your childhood. Let's start there, shall we? I think it's a good place to start. And as everyone knows, we got Reading Junior Days been mentioned many times. That was a big part of yours. You entered it 3 times, I think?
3 times.
Came back another time as the winner.
In the gala show.
Yeah, in the gala show, yeah.
So I lost the first year to Christian Glenwright and to Dominic Wood. Christian came first, Dominic came second. Then the next year after that, Dominic came first, I came second, and then I went in for a 3rd time, and I came first. And I think Michael White came second.
So I think the timing of this is really interesting, because we just had Young Magician of the Year a few weeks ago, and there's something you did, which is every year you basically came back with a new act. You kind of would scrap it and come back with something new. And some of the youngsters maybe who didn't win Young Magician of the Year a couple of weeks ago might be thinking of doing that. Do you think on reflection that was the right thing to do?
It was absolutely the wrong thing to do. I'll clarify that it wasn't a completely new act. It was the same theme, but essentially everything else was completely different. So I'd have new costumes, the props would be completely different, the music would be completely different, the staging would be completely different, the moves would be completely different. And the fact that the costumes were really different meant the steals were very different, so it means you'd have less time to sort of perfect those steals. It was very hit and miss, so I could have a really good show where everything just happened to work, but equally because I was essentially unrehearsed, because everything was so different, I could have a massive egg on my face, which happened a few times as well.
So you would say to youngsters listening to this, a better idea is to evolve your act over the years.
Absolutely. I mean, I was competing a lot with Dominic Wood, and Dominic would refine his act, but not change it drastically. He may add a section or two into the show to lengthen it, or he might take a bit out to shorten it. But essentially it was the same act, just refined. He may paint some of the props from red to gold or something like that, but essentially it'd be the same act, and he would just refine it and improve on it each time, whereas I would scrap the whole thing and do the whole thing again from scratch, which is a bad move. But I was never happy with it, so I always wanted to push forward and create something different. So that was my mindset. Really.
So the act that I remember you for vividly was your brightly psychedelic scissor act. But how did we get there? Because it wasn't always that. It was more Lance Burton inspired. I remember at one point you were wearing almost like a cape and things in the early days.
That's correct. I was actually inspired by two magicians early on, or maybe three actually. So Lance Burton initially, I saw him when I was 4 years old on Knight Rider. Do you remember that?
Legendary TV show.
Yeah.
With Kit.
With Kit, yes. Yeah. And he was in a show called, I think it was on YouTube, called The Deadly Nightshade. That's definitely worth watching or YouTubing if you haven't seen it. So Lance Burton was the evil magician, and he did a dove act on that show. I was captivated by that. And then I saw a few years later Richard Griffin perform in a show called The Stars of the Magic Circle, which was organised by a great magician called Kavari. And Richard had the ruffles and he looked like Lance Burton. He had the same sort of hair, your kind of hair actually. It's very Lance Burton-y hair.
Your partner has just been saying I've got good hair.
You do have good hair.
You like it too?
Yeah, it's good.
It's a good day for young today.
Yeah.
It's a bit of sunlight, it's what it does, you see. I've been in England for months and back here in the sunshine in Vegas.
Yeah, so you're going to get those doves in your tailcoats?
We could talk about animal magic and how it's wrong to use animals in 2019.
That's very true.
But it's going to take it in a whole different direction.
So Richard Griffin was sort of my idol when I was sort of 11, 12 years old. But also I was watching Tempest and Cotet, it was in Paul Daniels' magic show, and Salvano. So two very different acts, but both of them influenced me. And I think the first Reading Day I went into with the Zombie Ball, which was based on sort of Tempest and Cotet's act. I lost that competition, went in next year, and I realised that Christian Glenwright and Dominic Wood and Philip Hitchcock and Richard Griffin were all winners of these competitions, and I realised that you have to be essentially a tail-coated carbon nip dove act to get anywhere in these competitions. But my mum unfortunately wouldn't let me have doves, and there were seamstresses at the time. They're in a dress manufacturing company.
So your parents owned a
clothing company,
so and your mum is a seamstress.
That's correct. Yeah,
this is going to be very helpful.
My granddad was as well. They had factories in Mitcham, and they made dresses for the retail high street stores. So there was always scissors around the place, small ones, massive ones. And as a sort of a 12, 13-year-old kid, they're always around the house. So Salvano produced cocktail glasses and shot glasses, and ended up making a bottle appear. So it was essentially a mixture between Lance Burton's and Salvano's act, really, and I sort of fused them together, and there were scissors around the house, so I started manipulating scissors. So that's how the scissor act came about.
I'm interested to know, as a young magician, was it the same for you as it was for me that Reading Junior Day was the highlight of your year? Would you look forward to it? Like, was it a deadline for you with these competitions? So there weren't many other competitions. Did you view it, other than Young Magician of the Year, as like the competition that you wanted to?
Everyone knew of the Young Magician of the Year, and it was more underground, the Reading Junior Day. But there was a huge amount of competitors. I think there was like 16, 17 competitors at the time, which I don't know how many of the Young Magicians get this year. Do you know?
Sadly, there were only 11 entries this year to Young Magician of the Year. Right. At which point, only 6 of them became finalists. So, yeah, as I said
bit of a decline
before, it's not as many people.
Which was interesting because magic's far more popular now than.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a weird thing because I think Young Magicians Club actually has more members than it's ever had before. But I guess they're more interested in the close-up magic than the stage. Right. But that's kind of ultimately, as you've just described, that's down to what inspires them, right?
And what was not what the standard like, but what was the theme like?
They all do have a theme, actually. That's something quite nice.
Right.
That they'll all have a theme. They'll have something going on. There was Theo Mellor did a football act. Robbie Stevens did a brilliant act with Coca-Cola cans. That's like the Russian roulette, over the head where you open the cans. Right. One's been shook up and stuff like that. So there's listen, it's different, very different to when you and I were kids. But they, it's very clear to me they are working as hard. There's just not as many of them, which is kind of what's sad in a way.
The inspiration is very different. I mean, back in our day, there really was only the Best of Magic. There was the Paul Daniels Magic Show. There was the Disney Magic Specials. But yeah, so where do you find your inspiration from? And my mum happened to record those 2 episodes, one with Marco Tempest and one with Salvano. And I had Lance Burton on the Best of Magic. And I didn't know Lance Burton was the guy that was on the Knight Rider show. I didn't know they're the same person at the time. So that was it. I had 3 acts as my inspiration, and that's all I had to work with. So that's what I did. So I moulded myself through those 3 VHSs.
Do you know one of the reasons I think that you went to kind of like hero status for me as a young magician? Not just your brilliant, colourful scissor act, actually, but you were also... The BBC made a documentary about you, didn't they? It was called The Lowdown, which was on Children's BBC, back in the day when Children's BBC was on BBC One in the afternoons. Yeah. And you were... I even remember the trailer for it. In fact, I've still got it. I had it on VHS and I transferred it. But the beginning of that trailer says, a young illusionist tipped as the next David Copperfield. And at this point, I'd already seen you win Junior Day.
Right.
So that very much was the status that you were given. Talk to me about that documentary, because one thing I hadn't considered until I spoke to Dominic was like, well, there must have been other youngsters who wanted this documentary made about them. Why did they make it about you?
So, rewinding a bit, so after I'd entered the Reading Junior Day for the first time and I lost to Christian and to Dominic, I was on a TV show called Surprise Surprise with Cilla Black, and I met Jeffrey Durham. I had to perform a trick on Surprise Surprise with Jeffrey Durham. I pushed a can of pineapple chunks through his head.
Brilliant.
And I met Jeffrey. He invited me to his office and he gave me about 1,000 magic magazines. There was a back catalogue from Abras. Remember Goodliff's Abras?
Yeah. This is like before Magic Week.
Way before Magic Week.
This is the way we got our news.
It was a week Saturday little magazine.
Weird how it was always Saturday, just like Magic Week. Though,
it was, yeah. And it dated back. I had copies dated back to I would like to say the 50s. Wow. I don't know. I had some really old Magic magazines, and he gave me all the Magic manuscripts and all the Genie magazines and all the Magic magazines that he had from his entire life. So I was reading those and it kind of propelled me sort of forward. I realised the power of television from that. It had 13 million viewers. I walked down the high street with my parents and I got screamed at because people recognised me. It was essentially the power of what Britain's Got Talent has now, but I was only 13 and I realised the power of television. And so I obsessively started to write to production companies as a 14-year-old. I managed to get a hold of Spotlight, I think was a book at the time, and it had every listed production company in the UK, and wrote to all of them. And at the end of the letter I said, P.S. oh no, not the bin again, and it kind of guilt tripped them.
Sorry, oh no, not the bin again.
Yeah, so I was basically guilt tripping them to not throw my letter in the bin. I basically said I'm a 13, 14-year-old magician with tremendous skill and a highly original style, and you need me for your next TV show, etc., etc. Please contact me. Best wishes, Keelan. Oh no, not the bin again. And I pretty much had 100% reply. And
100% reply?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, pretty much. I think there was one nasty reply, and that was from Hello Magazine, and said we only deal with celebrities. Aside from that, I had a lot of meetings as a 13, 14-year-old magician, and one of them was from a company called Landseer, and Ken Howard, who was the director, said we make a show called The Lowdown. We'd like to come have a meeting with you. We think you'd be a great subject for the Lowdown documentary. And went for the meeting, and very quickly that got signed up, and that's how that came about.
That's amazing. So there wasn't other magicians in the running for it. You just, as often the way of TV, great timing. You just were putting yourself out there. They were looking for a subject, and you fitted the bill perfectly.
Yeah, they weren't looking for a magician at all. They the letter landed on my desk, and it was the right desk.
And kids, there is no reason why you can't do that tomorrow.
No, I wish I had the gumption now that I had back then, because I had no fear back then. I had no fear of rejection, and I still got the letters actually, because people send emails now, they don't send letters.
Yeah.
So because they were handwritten letters, I got handwritten letters back, and I got like a stack of them from from Central Television, from Talkback Television, from Tiger Aspect, all the that were big back then.
So the documentary effectively follows you through the process of Young Magician of the Year, the competition, doesn't it? In addition to understanding, it's like biographical as well. It's your journey into magic, how you got into it. You talk in your, was it a shed? Was it
yes,
like your magic?
I had a shed. Yes,
there's a scene in a shed in your mum and dad's garden. It's like your magic cave.
Yes, and it was.
Yeah,
yes.
and you talk about how you got into magic. Similar story to what you just told me.
Yeah.
And then they go through the process of Young Magician of the Year. However, actually, the year they happened to be following you, you didn't actually get to the final that year, did you?
I didn't know.
And is it fair to say that the Magic Circle were not too welcoming of this documentary crew at the finals, at the heats?
At the heats, yeah. So with the documentary crew, we had just been to the Blackpool Magic Convention, and when Derek Lever found out about me through the documentary, because the BBC had asked to film the Blackpool Magic Convention, he asked me to enter the Blackpool Magic Championships, which the act went down really well. As a 14-year-old magician, I stormed that competition. I won the title of British Junior Magical Champion, which the papers got hold of, the Daily Mail, and being in the Daily Mail at the time, it was a big thing, probably still is a big thing, and I was called up by every TV station in the country. So This Morning, Rich and Judy, The Big Breakfast at the time, Blue Peter, Esther Ranson Show, they all wanted me on their show, and so we did a few of those shows, and it was incredible. And then the Young Magician of the Year heats came, and I'd had all this publicity generated about me. My act had been built up in sort of the magic press and the TV and press in general. The BBC had secured the rights from the Magic Circle to film at the competition. They had it all in writing. It was all documented, that it's signed and sealed off. When they had got to the heats, I was unaware of any of this, by the way. The Magic Circle decided that they didn't want the BBC to film, but because they had secured the rights, Ken Howard said, we're going to film anyway, and so they went ahead and filmed the competitors. They had all the release forms from the competitors before they'd even sort of set foot in the venue, so that was all squared off as well. And obviously the competitors were very happy to be filmed because they're going to be on Children's BBC. But unbeknownst to me, there was a lot of animosity around me. I didn't know any of this was happening. The director didn't tell me any of this until after I'd performed, but I knew there was this animosity around me and I didn't know why.
When you say animosity, do you mean jealousy?
I don't know, just people not talking to you, staring at you.
Because you're the kid tipped to win, right? At this stage, because of all this publicity you've had.
I guess so. And anyway, I performed the act, and I can't remember the act. It wasn't good enough to reach the finals. I certainly wasn't good enough to beat Dominic Wood, who quite rightly ran at the time. We're 3 years apart. Dominic was always that sort of stage ahead of me. But yeah, it wasn't until I performed and the day had finished, Ken had said, that we had a few problems, but we didn't want to tell you, but we'll obviously tell you now that the Magic Circle said we couldn't film, but we had to film anyway because we had the permission to film on paper, and we had a documentary to make, so they filmed anyway. This
is the first big kick in the gut you get, though, in your magical career at the age of 14. Are you at this stage?
Yeah.
You get this kick in the gut where you... May I be so brash as to ask, did you believe your own hype a little bit? Did you think, I'll definitely get through to the final here? Because everyone's saying that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely did. And it's funny because at the Blackpool Magic Convention, I interviewed David Burglos as one of the people in the documentary. And he said to me afterwards, he said, just to warn you, it's not always going to be like this.
Is that what he said?
And I didn't know really what he meant at the time. But you're going to have your ups and downs. It's not always going to be like this, and it's stuck in my memory to this day. And he was absolutely right. You do have your ups and downs.
Yeah. Not
just through that. I mean, that's trivial in comparison to your life's ups and downs.
You took Michael Bailey to task on the documentary. I'll never forget this lovely scene. I assume in your back garden, where Michael Bailey, the then president, comes and says, "Well, he gives you reasons why you didn't get through to the final." But you also took him to task on the fact that you felt you weren't given enough credit for your originality, the fact that your mum had made your costume, you'd made your props. The rules have never changed, actually. Do you feel that it's still not right that the kids that are trying to do original things, even if perhaps they're not quite as good as the kids up there doing other more established classics of magic and not given a bit of leeway or some credit for that?
Should I have taken him to task? I don't know. Probably not. I never actually saw him again after that. I know he's passed away now, which is really sad, and I've never met him since. But it's quite sad that was my sort of lasting sort of speech with him.
I think he would have completely understood where you're coming from. I can see a little. I've got the documentaries, and it's on a private YouTube link on YouTube. Which, if I leave that in, means I'll now get loads of emails people asking me what the link is. But I think he understands in it that you're a kid who just wanted a bit of credit for your originality, basically, in addition to all the other things. But
do I think that should override the rest of an act? I guess you should get an originality award, but no, I don't think you should. If an act is slick and it ticks all the boxes, and even if it's just bought props, at the end of the day, with competitions there are rules, and they've got to mark on certain criteria, and if the boxes don't tick, you shouldn't win. So
you carry on working on the act through to you're 16, 17, you get another crack at Young Magician of the Year 2 years later. By now, I remember how good the act was in 95. We're now going towards 97. You kept working at it. You were vanishing at the end, turning into a giant pair of scissors.
Yeah.
It was amazing, but you didn't win, and as I saw...
No, I completely screwed it up. I changed it again to far too much. Again, changed all the props. I remember I did a show with Wayne Dobson. I was in his show, and Wayne said to me at the end of the show that you're going to turn into a pair of scissors, and the scissors should close. And because Wayne Dobson had said it to me, I thought, well, this is what I must do. The oracle has spoken. I must do this. And so, speaking to my dad, we completely redesigned the illusion where I turn into a pair of scissors, and these scissors have to open and close. Like a 6-foot pair of scissors. They're massive.
You're a big kid, weren't you?
Yeah. And this is quite a bit of engineering to create. But we put it off. But the downside of putting it off, it took me 10 minutes to disappear, as opposed to half a second. Okay, it was supposed to look like the Pendragons, but it ended up looking like the complete opposite. So there were things like that I was changing for the sake of changing. If your act stays the same, you're not growing, and if you're not growing, you're not going to win. As far as I was concerned, as I said earlier, that's not the right mind frame to have for a competition.
So you're growing up, and then you get to 18, and you went to a nice school, and you're going off to university.
That's right.
Where does magic... When did even at this age you want to be a professional magician, but you were always a stage performer, so did you know you had to get the degree as a backup plan, or did magic go by the wayside for a little while? Because the reason I asked this, by the way, is that, as you mentioned, Dominic was a few years ahead of you.
Yeah.
Dominic pretty much went straight onto television, didn't he? And, was on...
He did. I was a little jealous of Dominic and Stephen. Dominic went to Children's BBC, and Stephen went to...
Stephen Mulhern.
Stephen Mulhern went to the Disney Channel. And I went to UCL to study philosophy and economics, two of the most boring subjects.
That sounds dreadful, I've got to be honest.
On Earth. And it was it was depressing compared to the fun times that they were having. But I felt I needed... Well, everyone told me I needed that to fall back on. I don't think if I had children I would say the same thing. I did well at school, I did well at A-levels, I did well at university, but if it's not your passion or what your goal is, I don't think you should ever diversify from your dream. Not that saying that my dream is what those two, the routes that they've gone down. I would make a terrible presenter, as this podcast would show. But their dream of sort of doing sort of magic on television, etc. They were doing it. But while I was at university, I got a job doing some work experience at Nickelodeon, and while I was there, I played them for my own show there, and they said no. And then as soon as I finished work experience, I got a call from them saying we would like to make this show. So I made a series with them doing some street magic for Nickelodeon. And that went down really well, and that was recommissioned for a second series, which was really nice. And at the same time, I was working for Dynamic Effects, which was run by Mark Paul, and Nick Reed, Paul Andrews, and Anthony Owen at the time. And Mark had previously given me a job when I was 14 at Hamleys, so he was my boss then. And he judged me at Young Magician of the Year. And after that sort of Young Magician of the Year, he started regularly giving me his residencies that he couldn't do, and Paul Andrews' residency that he couldn't do. So those dates that they had other better gigs.
And let's be honest, they had a bit of a monopoly of the close-up scene in London at the time, didn't they? Yeah.
Fade Presto, Zap, and Dynamic Effects. They were the guys, and I probably was the wealthiest student at UCL because they gave me so much work. I was working every weekend for them, and at Christmas time I was working every day for them. Mark was really good, and Nick Reed, they paid me the same money as they got. So I was a wealthy student, and I remember coming back to my halls of residency every night with my briefcase and my suit, and the students would laugh at me because I'd be dressed up to the nines in my tuxedo, and they'd be on their student gear, and I've earned another, few hundred pounds for doing a couple of hours ambitious card. It was good.
You didn't stick with that for long, and this is where this story is going to get really interesting, because now what's about to happen is in the next decade or so, you are going to go through a number of different careers here, aren't you? It's fair to say. You've been in 2 double acts for a start, and you're not in a double act anymore.
3 double acts.
3 double acts.
Four double acts.
4 double acts.
4 double acts.
This is unbelievable.
So there's Lewis and Leyser, Keelan and Rich, then Keelan and Charlotte, and now myself and Matt Daniel Baker.
So 4 double acts. So before we go into each of these things you've done, have you always just moved where the market's gone? So let's be completely blunt. David and Daniel, big hit on America's Got Talent, doing quick change. You go, people like that, let's do that. At the moment, there's a big wave of digital technology. You go, let's go in this direction. Or is it just, you just like change? Like, what is this process of you going in different areas? The point I'm making actually is that you, unlike Dominic then, who went, I'm doing this TV thing. As you just said, you have a little taste of this TV thing with the Nickelodeon series and all the other stuff you just mentioned, but you decide to go in a different direction. Why is that? Why the movement through your career to different areas?
None of it has been specifically conscious. I haven't conscientiously gone, well, this is where the market's going, so I'm going to do that. Certainly with the quick change, I didn't think I was going to earn a lot of money doing that necessarily. It was just something I really wanted to do. Stuff with Dr. David Lewis. I used to do a lot of lectures, keynote speeches with Dr. David Lewis. He's
You met him at a urinal.
That is correct. Your research is impeccable. So I was doing a close-up gig, I think probably for Nick Reed, I would imagine, and it was a typical London close-up gig, and this guy just kept on following me around. You know how annoying that is at a close-up gig?
Yeah.
When that one person is following around, you feel like they're doing it to try and catch you out. They want to see that Omnidet switch or something like that.
You also become completely aware immediately that they know how little material you have.
Exactly, yeah. You're doing the same sort of 3 tricks over and over again. And he followed me around, and it was quite annoying, frankly. Anyway, I went to the loo, and I was at the urinals, and he's there again next to me, and he speaks to me and says, "So you're a magician?" I said, "Yes, I am." So I'm a magician too, and I was like, "Yeah, right." And he said, "We should have a meeting." And so all very awkward, as you know, the rules of golden rules of etiquette at urinals. You don't ask someone the time, or you don't speak to them. And
the golden rules of urinals.
Nice watch. So anyway, he gives me his card, and he phones me after the gig and says, "Can we have a meeting?" And so I go down to his house, and he's a psychologist called Dr. David Lewis, and he is a prolific writer. I googled him, and he had a very, very impressive CV. He's written some major works in
lots of different areas, right?
Lots of different areas, from cats to Hitler to new consumerism to body language. He was a very respected TV psychologist. He was on pretty much every show in the UK, from Wogan to This Morning. To every major show, he was the TV psychologist. And he wanted to bring magic into his show. As a magician, he was terrible. He didn't really know any sleight of hand, but he bought massive illusions. So I went to his house, and his house was like an Aladdin's cave of magic. He had big Copperfield style illusions that were worth thousands, and I said, "Well, what do you use this stuff?" He said, "No, I literally just bought it to find out how it was done."
It's amazing.
And so for me, it was great. I didn't have any illusions at the time, and so we started working on bringing magic into his keynote speeches, and then I ended up being part of his keynote speeches, and we ended up forming a double act called Lewis and Leyser. And as a 20-year-old or 21-year-old just coming out of university, it was amazing for me. I got to speak at some of the biggest corporate events in the world because of him, and it was great for me. He was really great in terms of being very open to bring stuff into the speeches. So I was, as I mentioned earlier, I was influenced by Marco Tempest and his use of digital magic.
You two were way ahead of your time with this. There's now a big wave in magic.
Yes.
This is, like I said, 2001?
This is 2000, and this is sort of, the end of the 90s to early 2000s, and we were using PowerPoint presentations at the time. I said, well, it'd be great if we could bring digital magic into that. And you, David Lewis, walk into the screen and pass objects in and out of the presentation screen, and David could go into the cyber world, and we could sort of have a conversation in the cyber world, etc., and talk about innovation and creativity through the means of digital magic. So I was editing on a very rudimentary PC at the time. Everything was very slow. The internet was extremely slow on dial-up connections, and that was my sort of into digital magic. And the quick change came after that, really. At the same time I was socially dancing, doing Ciroc and Modern Jive and West Coast Swing, and I'd met Charlotte at dance competitions. I used to do this relentlessly, sort of 5-6 times a week. I was doing 2 to 3 hours dancing a night.
Wow.
It became an absolute obsession. So I entered as many dance competitions as I did magic competitions, actually probably more. Yeah, it became an absolute obsession, and I wanted to bring magic and dance together because I just enjoyed dancing. So after working on Playing Tricks, which was another TV series I had with Richard Reed and Jez Rose and Tarek Knight and Loki, Laura London, Chris Nicholson, I met Clifford Bradley, who was a magical advisor, and he was an illusionist, and I bought every single illusion I could possibly get my hands on from him. He was kind of winding things down at the time, so I had everything, and tried everything, and everything worked for us. But we toyed with illusions for a few years with Charlotte. I felt that the illusions always stilted the dancing. You always have to stop dancing to do these illusions. Whereas I thought quick change, you could make it a little bit more seamless. And obviously I'd seen David and Danya at a Blackpool Magic Convention and saw how well they went down. I was like, I want that reaction. And but there was no YouTube in those days. There was no source of information for quick change at all. There was no books, there was no DVDs, there was no YouTube, there was no videos of them to study them. So I knew of a Tura Brachetti from The Best of Magic, but that wasn't the same sort of technique. So we didn't know where to look. So my mum, who I mentioned earlier, was a seamstress. She mocked up.
It's going to be quite helpful.
Quite useful. And then out of the blue, Dave and Danya decided to do a workshop at the South Tyneside Magic Convention. They're charging quite a lot of money for it, but nothing that would break the bank. So I get myself, Charlotte and my mum a ticket to this, and we go to this workshop, and it's got 3 or 4 very well-known UK magicians there. And so I knew everyone in the room, but none of them had my mother, who had been working in the rag trade since she was 14. She's been a seamstress since she was 14. So she's an absolute genius. She's incredibly quick, and there isn't anything she doesn't know about making dresses. That's what my parents do. So I don't think Dave and Danya were expecting someone so knowledgeable to be sitting there. I'm assuming they expected a bunch of magicians to be sitting there, and the rest of us were kind of dumbfounded by their techniques. Because the thing is about quick change, you can show someone how it was done, but you still really can't understand the intricacies of the costumes.
Yeah.
They are really highly complex. So I remember Danya just changing in front of us, showing us how it was done, but we still really didn't understand how it was done, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's actually an area a lot of magicians don't know anything about, isn't it?
No, it's far more common nowadays. There's far more literature than there was back then. But yeah, it's an allied art of magic, as Jonathan Pendragon told me once. It's not really magic, it's an allied art of magic. So it goes in the same genre as, I guess, ventriloquism and juggling, etc.
The Magicians Podcast, brought to you in association with the Magic Circle, the world's premier magical society. Are you ready to join the world's most exclusive magic club? Visit themagiccircle.co.uk to find out more.
Gigi-O, free for 30 days. Be a pro, get Gigi-O.
Gareth Callian says any serious entertainer needs this. What's he talking about? Well, Gigi-O, of course. Top professional magicians love using Gigi-O to manage their bookings and admin. It's an easy-to-use web-based software that takes care of your inquiries, contracts, invoices, payments, and reports. You can generate professional PDF contracts in seconds and allow your clients to agree them online quickly and conveniently. It will even automatically update the diary on your phone. And because you are a listener of the Magicians Podcast, you can receive a free 30-day trial right now at getgigio.com. Getgigio is spelled GetGigio.com.
Whether you're new to magic or a seasoned professional, Alakazam Magic are here to help. Alakazam have been supplying magic to magicians for well over 20 years. Not only do we carry all the latest and greatest magic tricks, books and DVDs, but we also manufacture one of the finest ranges of magic tricks in the world. The Alakazam name is synonymous with great customer service, educated advice and honesty. So if you're shopping for new magic, make sure you check out our website www.alakazam.co.uk or pay a visit to our fully stocked shop.
Okay, today really is the day you should take a look at the Alakazam Online Magic Academy. It's a fantastic new way of learning magic. There's new content uploaded every single month with the country's best magicians. You will absolutely love this new facility on the Alakazam website. And because you are a podcast listener, you can receive 20% off your subscription. Simply enter the code MP20 at the checkout and you will receive 20% off. I know you will absolutely love it. Go and take a look at it today. I've never had anyone talk about this on this podcast, and I wonder if you would mind going into this area a little tiny bit, which is just the challenges of working with your partner. Is that did you find that? I mean, obviously you and Charlotte worked together for a long time, and also actually not just your partner. I know you and Richard Reed were best mates, and you've mentioned to me that there were times where it got a bit heated between you, just because you're such good mates. But then you've moved your relationship into an area of working together. Do you think, on reflection, it's a good idea working with your partner non-stop or your best mate?
I think you definitely need to have someone who accepts that there's going to be one person, not necessarily a leader, but a person that leads sort of the direction. Whereas with me and Rich is my best mate. I was best man at his wedding, and he's a fabulous cameraman. He's worked for the Bill and now works for the Casualty. We had a very similar skill set, so we sort of grew up together in the same town, did magic in the same sort of magic clubs. We both had very similar skill set as far as video editing, camera work, animation's concerned, and we were best mates. But working so closely together, we both had similar creative minds, and that just meant we were clashing all the time. We had amazing time playing tricks. It was extremely fun, and the best laughs and times where we would cry with laughter. But equally, the downside of that is that we were at each other's throats, you know, when we were having a creative discussion, and to a point where I had to say, I don't want to lose you as a mate. I would rather have you as a mate than have a career. So decided to go our separate ways.
Yeah. What about with you and Charlotte? Was the dynamic different there because you were the magician and you kind of would stage it from a magic point of view?
Yeah, there was definitely. Charlotte was very good. I was definitely the leader in that respect. She obviously had a dance background but no sort of magic background, so she was very good. And also there was an age difference. I was older than Charlotte, so I had that kind of age experience as well. Considering how much time that Charlotte and I spent together, so don't forget that we did a tour with Basil Brush, 110 theatres around the country, so we were in the car together all the time. The costumes take us hours and hours to do up after each performance. It takes seconds to come off, but they take us hours to do the costumes up. So we would be there basically sewing our costumes back up in a confined space in a dressing room. Sometimes we'd have 2 shows, so we'd spend like 8 hours together in a confined room. Then we're on a cruise ship together in a cabin, so we're spending literally 24/7 together as partners as well as an act. So but considering we spent that amount of time together, we actually got on really well.
But also being clear when you're in work mode and when you're just,
That's hard. And I think that was probably the catalyst of our breakup, really, was that I was just focused. I couldn't separate the two. So there was no downtime. So as far as if we had to have an argument about work, I was absolutely obsessed with work, and she obviously wanted to have a life outside of magic. Magic was my passion, and so no, that was probably the catalyst to the start of the sort of downfall of our relationship.
I appreciate you saying that, and actually, if anyone doesn't know, but I've dated our young and strange assistant for 5 years, and that was certainly something. You've been so honest there, so I think it's only fair I add to it and say actually that was exactly the same thing for Rachel and I, that we never knew where the line was between now we're working and you're employed by me, and also now we're just boyfriend girlfriend. There's no clocking on clocking off time, is there, where it becomes clear? So it is difficult, I think.
One thing I learnt from doing that is actually I didn't want Charlotte to be seen as an assistant. I wanted to be like David and Danya. I wanted to be part of the double act. So it wasn't about. I didn't want it to be about me. I wanted it to be about us. It was Keelan and Charlotte was the brand. It wasn't Keelan Leyser. It was Keelan and Charlotte. Which advice, if you are bringing someone into your show, be prepared for it to, if it does split up, you're splitting up a brand, and I'm sure the Pendragons would have something to say about this. It's hard, and when you do split up, you're concerned about your business. You're splitting up your business. It's not, you can't just worry about the personal things in your life. You're worried about
how you're going to make a living.
How you're going to make a living, And we had to, even after splitting up, we still had gigs to fulfill. And Charlotte and I are like best friends now, so it's absolutely fine. But at the time, when you're going through awkward times, and you've still got to spend hours and hours, like 8 hours a day, sewing your costumes up in a confined space and going out, and it's tough.
Yeah. You kindly sent me some biographical information ahead of this interview, and there was one bit on it which really caught my eye, which is that you won the British Magical Championships with the Quick Change Act, right? You wrote there you considered it the best night of your life.
Yeah, I think it
now,
was.
Considering actually all the incredible stuff you've done, TV shows, and you've literally toured the world dozens and dozens of times, I'm just interested why the British Magical Championships is the highlight of you literally wrote it, best night of my life.
I think it was fulfilling a childhood dream, I suppose, of getting recognition from the magic world that I've finally done something. So
this is
good,
why I wondered if it went back to the fact that, the Young Magician of the Year, you didn't win. This is an equivalent sort of competition. I wondered if, because you'd never won that, I wonder if it was something where you...
Yeah, and I suppose it was writing... it was going back to what I was saying about Dominic Wood sort of refining his act, and I never did that, but with the Quick Change Act, it was something that I did do. I got the Buzzer Brush tour from Richard Goodell, who was looking for an illusionist at the time, and he said to me, if there was a new act I want to bed in, then this is the time to do it, which is really kind of Richard to do that. And I said, well, I've got this Quick Change Act I want to do. Do you mind if I do that in the tour? And he said, yeah, go for it. So I started the tour without an act. 105 shows later, I end up with the act I went into the British Magical Championships with, and I won. That act was refined through the 105 to 110 shows that we did, and that's what you need for an award-winning act, and I never did that.
So you create this act, you win this competition, you're travelling the world, looks like you got the best life ever. Like you said, you're doing all these incredible TV shows in the Far East, and you did Penn and Teller Fool Us with Charlotte doing the Quick Change, but was it fair to say it's like a bubble that burst for Quick Change? It's one of those things where, did it feel like the world had seen it and then the work dried up?
It was insane busy for a good 5-6 years. David and Danya were on America's Got Talent, and YouTube had just started. It was 2005 when YouTube came out. David and Danya, I think, were on America's Got Talent in 2007, so 2 years YouTube had been around, and it was the first sort of major viral thing on YouTube. And because they weren't that easy to find on Google, and I was pretty good with computers, I was next in line, and we had the same manager. So Martin used to deal with all.
Sorry, you had the same manager as David and Daniel?
So after I won Blackpool Magic Championships, Martin, who used to deal with David and Danya's bookings outside of the US, put his business card on my dressing room door, and he was our manager for our entire quick change career. But most of the work came to me sort of directly. I was very sort of savvy with the internet, so it was quite easy to find. And they were so busy with their NBA tours. There was only us, Sussex Victoria, and Soul Mystique. And Soul Mystique were in Australia, Sussex Victoria were in Germany, and there was us in the UK, and we pretty much snapped up with the four of us. There was too much work for the 4 quick change acts around the world. I think Soul Mystique were on cruise ships, so it was really just us and Sussex Victoria who were snapping up all the quick change work. And I attribute most of that to David and Danya doing incredibly well on AGT.
And I mean, I'm just going to ask a question because I just always try, even if you're not going to answer the question. What sort of money were you able to charge for a quick change act, a 6 or 7 minute quick change act? Corporate?
It was actually 4.5 minutes. We used to sell it as 7 minutes, but in fact it was only 4.5 minutes.
So we're going back about a decade, maybe longer.
Thousands. It was good, really good money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like thousands of pounds.
Thousands upon thousands. Yeah.
To do a 4.5 minute act.
It was good. It was good.
Wow.
It was thousands upon thousands of pounds, but you are still travelling to Abu Dhabi or India. We did a lot of work in India, being a colourful act, and their part of their history is stemmed with colours. It's a very popular act in India, so we've spent a lot of time in India and the Middle East and Asia and stuff like that. And we got a lot of TV shows because again, David and Danya couldn't do a lot of the shows. We were snapped up by so many TV shows. It was insane, literally all over the world. So we have a lot to thank to David and Danya, and we have a lot to thank for the quick change. I'm very, very grateful for that time of my career.
So why, during this process, when you're experiencing this incredible lifestyle and you're making this money and you're travelling the world, why did you buy magictricks.co.uk in the middle of this? Did you see it as a pension plan? Did you see the bubble was going to burst, really? Or
I did expect it to burst, although I knew it was going to end. I knew it was going to be short-lived. It actually lasted a lot longer than I expected it to. And then when it came, I wasn't prepared for it. While I was on the cruise ships, I was designing websites for Carl Fraser, who owned magictricks.co.uk at the time. He wanted to venture out into other areas, so he set up a website called Just Converse, and then Just Sketchers, selling shoes, and then something called Eco Balls, and then something called Cube World, which is a little game. And I think I did about 150 different websites for him over that period of time, selling random products. So he was clearly diversifying away from magic, and he wasn't a magician. Carl Fraser, if you don't know, he is the coder for Gigio, who is, of course, your sponsor.
Yes.
So
it's a free 30-day trial available right now to anyone listening to this.
I have 2 Gigio accounts.
Do you?
Yeah, so we have an agency account and my personal account, so it's
there you go.
So you should definitely sign up. It has changed my life.
You've got nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. There's no way back once you join either. It's absolutely brilliant. It's just the way forward.
It is. Carl's shoe site was taking off, and he didn't have the time to answer the magic inquiry. So he said to me, "Do I know anyone who would like to buy it?" Not thinking that I would want to buy it, and I said, "I can't recommend anyone to you because I want it."
Yeah. Was it doing a good business at the time?
It was on decline because he lost interest in it. His shoe website was doing extremely well, selling Converse, so he wasn't really. Magic was small time for him compared to the other stuff he was selling at the time. So it definitely wasn't the decline, and because he wasn't paying any interest in it, The site wasn't being updated. The orders were still being fulfilled, but it wasn't growing as a site. So he said, make me an offer. So I made him an offer, and that was it, really.
So we've used the term a few times, the bubble burst, but actually, well, I mean, what we're talking about effectively, the work dried up.
Yeah.
Was it pretty quick? Or
I didn't feel like it was happening because I was so busy with magic tricks. I didn't notice the decline in the quick change. But like everything, you have a temporary monopoly for a certain period of time, and then there's barriers to entry. And I've always been in areas of magic where there is a barrier to entry. So the barrier to entry for quick change was A, the knowledge of how quick change works. B, you can't just buy these props. You can't just buy costumes off the shelf, which you probably can now, but at the time you couldn't just buy them off the shelf. C, you need someone to be able to create these costumes. So if you don't have the knowledge, you can't buy the costumes, and you can't find someone to create the costumes. And then are you going to invest tens of thousands of pounds for a seamstress to create the costumes, which you don't even know if they're going to work or not? That's a good barrier to entry. So the chances of a competitor coming in is quite remote. But as time goes on, people start to sell out. Books are written. China starts selling costumes. DVDs start coming out. People start getting in on the craze and trying to make a bit of money, even though that these people who are creating the DVDs and writing the books aren't necessarily performing the act themselves. They're selling the concept. And so there's no secrecy to it anymore, which was sad, because David and Danya, when they gave us the tutorial, took us so far, but it was only from my magical background and my mum's creative background, from a seamstress point of view, that we could put the two together and create the mechanisms of what made quick change work, which is something I still haven't released. There are, Source Victoria have their own way of releasing sort of the dresses, and I have my own way, and they're similar but they're not the same. One day maybe I'll release it, but it is a shame that quick change was really one of the only illusions in magic that was a real secret. It was a real sort of hidden art, and that's now gone, and now, you know, it's used in every pantomime and it's used in every holiday camp, and with that the fee goes from thousands and thousands to, I'm not paying you a few £100 to fly to Abu Dhabi and do a 4-minute routine. I'll either find a local act that can do it, not as well maybe, or maybe they can do it as well, you know, or maybe it doesn't make any difference whether they can do it as well as not. They're just every holiday park has one, and you know, it becomes less exclusive.
Yeah.
And so there's no need to fly us in from the UK to Singapore, because they'll just find someone in Singapore that can do it.
So I'm just putting myself in your situation, going, what would I do if this thing is what I do, and it's suddenly not? It's like suddenly no one booking close-up magicians in the UK. What did you?
So I panicked. I was investing a lot of money into certain products with magic tricks, sort of high-end electronics. So I had my sort of money invested there, and magic tricks in general. I was investing a lot of money into the website and just to products in general. And I literally one day to the next, I had panic, thinking, oh my God, there's no quick change coming in. So what do I do? Okay, well, I've got to go back to close up. But I'd literally wiped every bit of. I mean, that's one thing I did with my website. There was a stage where I was an illusionist, I was a quick change artist, I was a video editor, I was a close-up magician, I was a wedding magician, I was a trade show magician, I was a speaker. I had literally every different genre of anything. I was a psychological magician, I was a mind reader. I had every different category on my website. When the quick change came along, I scrapped everything and became the quick change artist, became the man who could do quick change. So I was the go-to guy for quick change. The downside of that is when it shit hits a fan and there's no work coming through, you're the guy that does quick change, you're not the guy that does close-up anymore. So where does that work come from? It doesn't. It only comes through sort of work that friends perhaps who are close to you, like jobs that perhaps Matt Daniel Baker couldn't do, or Rob Fox, etc. Gigs that they couldn't do. I would perhaps get their work because I wasn't known as a close-up magician. No agency would book me because I was the very successful TV quick change artist that was going around the world. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was successful as far as everyone.
So this
was
is quite a
concerned.
tough period of time. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it was, and I was concerned about where the work was going to come in. So
this is going back to what David Berglar said to you. This is, you're going to have big ups and
big downs. Yeah. And so I panicked and I set up a boarded domain name, Close Up Magicians. It was a premium domain name, but it wasn't that expensive. It was closeupmagicians.co.uk, and I quickly created a website for that and quickly optimized it to get it up for the word Close Up Magician and Close Up Magicians, etc. And I optimized it to be a very generic. I will take any gig. I will take student parties, weddings, literally anything, and I did for those few months.
This must have been a bit soul destroying.
Yeah,
isn't it? Like considering what the other stuff you've done.
It was, and this is what comes down to.
We've heard the whole story here. The childhood.
I'm back to doing. I would take anything. I would take it for 150 quid.
It's like, well, effectively, it's like this. It's like going back and doing your student job, because this is what you were doing when you were a student.
Yeah,
it's like, most people when they're doing their degree, they work in Primark.
Mm.
It's like you're in your mid-30s having to go back to that.
And the beauty of it is, and although it is soul-destroying, and you think, oh my God, this is what it's come down to. I'm a faceless, jobbing magician doing ambitious card, and I wanted to be Lance Burton. I wanted to be the person that booked Keelan Leyser. I wanted to be on stage doing what Lance Burton's doing, and now I'm a faceless magician that don't really care who I am as long as I come in a nice suit and don't insult anyone, and do my tricks and make them applaud and go back. And but the beauty of that is, how great is it as a magician that you can do that?
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, we do talk about it on here as like the, this horrible thing you have to do, but I mean, we'd all be very, very grateful for it when the shit hits the fan, don't we, kind of thing.
And one of those jobs that came through was through that website, Close Up Magicians, which, as I said, was a very generic site, not aimed for any specific niche. Was a job for Microsoft, through Microsoft's head office, and they wanted to launch a new platform, and so I cobbled together an old showreel from the digital magic stuff that I did with David Lewis and said, well, this is what I do. And they hired me, and I brought Matt in on the show because I was nervous. It was branching out of my comfort zone, so I brought Matt in to he was used to doing stuff on stage and speaking to audiences, and I've been doing a silent act for 10 years. I wasn't feeling as confident as I was back in the sort of Lewis and Leyser days.
Yeah.
So I brought Matt in to become a double act with me, and I coded an act utilising Windows, and it went down really well. And then Rob Fox had a job come in for Acer, who also wanted to launch a new product, a tablet, and so he said, oh, you're clearly the man for the job. Went for an audition. I was auditioning against 2 other magicians, and I got the job because they said I put the most effort in. I coded a load of apps for their Acer tablet. It was on a Windows. Luckily, it was on a Windows system, so I did that with no problems. Put a video on YouTube, and within a week, it had 200,000 views, and then it was non-stop. My life just turned around again, and life became insane.
Yeah. And you and Matt have now done Masters of Illusion over here, and talk to us as magicians, and I'm one of them. I have absolutely no insight into this world of magic. How difficult is it? What are the challenges that you face when you're trying to create an act with iPads that are all working together? And
it's an absolute nightmare.
Is it really?
It's expensive. It's time consuming. Angela says, "Do I miss the quick change days?" And I do. I miss going out and doing a sort of a 5-minute act. Whereas every time I do a show now, it's always bespoke. It's always weeks and weeks of coding or filming green screen stuff, or editing, client approvals. Is this on brand, off brand? Conference calls. But I can't complain. Like, I absolutely love what I do, but it's just completely different from everything I've done before.
Are you worried that more people are going to move into this world?
They already have.
Just like what happened with the
it's
quick
exactly,
change?
and it's again the barriers to entry. The barrier to entry for quick change was, as I said, not having a seamstress, not knowing how the method was done, the quick change method was done. There was no YouTube at the time. Here, there is YouTube. The barrier to entry here is that you need to know coding to a certain level. I'm no Mark Kirsten, but I certainly can. I can get by. I know my coding. I know my tech. I know my animation sort of background. So the barrier to entry is I don't necessarily have to outsource too much. Most of it can be done in house, whereas someone else would perhaps have to outsource coders and not know where they start with those sort of things. But as apps get easier to create, more drag and drop, then more competitors come in. When I started doing the tablet and iPad stuff, there was me and one other guy in the UK. Now everyone's an iPad magician now, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really, really interested to know when we hear this whole story about how you've moved from one thing to another. There's one final key detail of the story which we left out, which is you've moved here to Las Vegas. And we're here in your amazing apartment, like a stone's throw from the Strip, and you live in the dream, and there's all these amazing shows. I'm really interested when I think back to that 14-year-old magician on the lowdown who was introduced as the next David Copperfield. What are your dreams, Keelan? Now, someone in your 30s, what do you want to? What's the next thing? If you've identified yourself already that maybe this iPad thing, the bubble will burst, what do you think is the next thing, and what do you really want to do?
It's a really good question because I don't actually know. I don't actually know.
Well, this goes hand in hand with the rest of the story. You've moved in waves and moved depending on opportunities that have come up and all the rest of it. So there's not a long-term plan.
I think it'll probably go full circle. I have no idea what the future's
back to the scissor act.
Not back to the scissor act. You'd love that, though, wouldn't you?
I would love it. We've talked about this because
yes.
There's this night going to happen at the Magic Circle in June, which is a tribute to Junior Day and Keith Churcher. And I said you should bring the scissor act out of retirement. Sadly, you said your dad threw everything away. Yes. I would have bought that stuff.
Would you?
Do you know that? I'd have put it in. I'd made like a little museum in my garage.
I think my life will go full circle in terms of going back to the stuff I did with Lewis and Leyser. So while I'm young enough to I still prance about on stage doing sleight of hand stuff to music, I'm utilising sleight of hand and iPads together. You have a lot of iPads. I think we've got like 60 now.
Wow.
We don't use them all in our show, but we use a good proportion of them. And we use video screens, LED screens and drones and stuff like that. But I see myself, when I get to the point where I'm too old to prance about on stage, then I'll probably go back to doing what I did with Lewis and Leyser, which is probably going back to adapting to what you see in the mirror, I suppose.
And just finally, tell me about the process of moving here to Las Vegas. It's, as I described when I walked in here, something I've thought about doing, and I've got lots of friends who listen to this podcast I know have thought about it at one time or another. Where did it come from, the idea to do it, and what is life like here, living here as a Brit?
Right. Well, both myself and my partner came out of two sort of quite stressful breakups, and that was not Charlotte, by the way. There's another breakup, and there was someone else in between then, and we just wanted a change. And my partner always wanted to live in America, and we don't have any commitments. We haven't got any children, and luckily I have a job that takes me all around the world. It's not specifically UK based as such. I do shows in the UK, but I do a lot in India, as I said. I do a lot in the Middle East. I do a lot in Asia. So I wasn't really specifically tied to the UK. And I was getting a lot of American inquiries come through. And the weird thing about inquiries from America, they automatically think you're American. Even though I'm on a .co.uk website, they still think you're American for some reason. And they get quite surprised when you say, I've got to fly in from the UK or I need a visa. I was getting a lot of inquiries for America, and she wanted to live there, so I was like, okay, well, why not? So I got a visa pretty quickly. A few magicians, Tim Clothier, helped me with that, and Jonathan Goodwin helped me find a realtor, and we found this apartment, and we did it all within about 2 weeks. It was insane.
And how is life here so far?
We absolutely love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, we really love it. We're 10 minutes from the airport. We're sort of 6 minutes from the Strip. So whereas I have a house in near Maidstone, so for me to do a job in, let's say, Park Lane, which is where a lot of the big sort of events happen, so say in the Grosvenor House, Park Lane, I have to take a car to this station, and then I have to get a train to London, and then from there take the tube to. Now I literally take a 6-minute Uber ride, and I'm in my
venue for
the evening, or I'm 10 minutes from the airport if I'm flying elsewhere. So from that perspective, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, this has been brilliant. When I'm thinking now, like if you'd have told the 14-year-old me when I watched you at the 1995 Young Magician Junior Day, kind of going, oh, one day you're going to interview that guy for your podcast in Las Vegas, I would never have believed it. And honestly, I just want to say this, like, it's amazing to see your journey and see how you evolve and change, and you're just a really nice guy and very down to earth, and I'm just absolutely honoured that you'd be on this podcast. I really mean that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
That was the first of my podcasts, which I recorded in Las Vegas. There are many more to come over the next few weeks. Make sure you stay tuned. Thanks very much for tuning in. I will see you again next Friday for another brand new episode of the Magicians Podcast. I'll see you then. Take care. Bye-bye.